I think Pete Buttigieg broke Fox News, and I'm going to show you some hosts with the most absurd reaction you can imagine to Buttigieg's appearance on the Flagrant podcast with Andrew Schulz, who was a sort of Trump-aligned figure, but vibed a lot with what Pete Buttigieg brought. And then I'll remind you of why I think they're scared of him appearing in more places, showing up on these sorts of podcasts that for a long time were dominated by MAGA figures and winning over a key group of voters that Trump did very well, unfortunately, with. And we'll flash back to some of his appearances on Fox News and also clips from that appearance. We did a whole segment on it, but if you didn't see, I'll remind you of some of that. So here are two of the Fox contributors saying, well, I don't need to summarize it. You'll see. Click the subscribe button if you appreciate this show.
Authority. And then poor Pete. I mean, Mayor Pete is not exactly the one you send out to get the young bro crowd. I mean, you may as well send Dylan Mulvaney doing a makeup class and hope you can get more guys to watch.
It's funny how he thought like growing the beard would somehow change everything. It didn't.
Make us forget.
Okay, we got.
If you watched my breakdown, I did like a 25-minute review of some of the clips from this appearance. Again, him with a comedian, Andrew Schulz, and a lot of guys who aren't very friendly to the Democratic Party, but really seem to like Pete and understand a lot of the points that he was bringing. Then you understand why they're coping so hard, because they have to get ahead of this. Let's say that Pete Buttigieg ran for president. I think they see how he could be so successful, which is someone who not only seems to identify key policy areas that are important, but is really dang good at messaging and then just being a likable guy, which I've talked about before. It's kind of concerning how much people go off of vibes when voting, but a lot of people really were won over to MAGA for some reason with the vibes of the podcast they were listening to. And it seemed like Trump was sort of the guy that you vote for. And so I don't know if you missed some of what was said there, but he says you might as well send Dylan Mulvaney, who was the trans influencer who kind of became a political subject because she got sponsored by Bud Light, and MAGA freaked out over it and crushed a bunch of Bud Light cans and shot a bunch of Bud Light cans. And so he's saying you might as well send out a trans influencer to do a makeup review instead of Pete Buttigieg comprehensively explaining his policy views. It's just obviously a reference to Buttigieg being gay and kind of that tired, worn out, to me, even if you were a MAGA viewer, you would feel this, but maybe not, lazy attack on Buttigieg, obviously coming from a hateful place. Then this.
Mayor Pete has an idea. He's clearly gotten the masculinity problem memo. He's pretending not to be a beta. He grew a beard and he hit the manosphere, the male podcast world.
What's wrong with you? Like what? You are a whatever. I'm not gonna guess, but you are a certain aged woman. You're a grown woman. There we go. That's what I meant to say. You're a grown woman, and you're talking about Buttigieg being beta, like beta male. All right. Before moving further to the why they seem to be preemptively trying to pour water on the idea that Buttigieg would be a strong figure in the Democratic Party, here's just another random moment from the same show.
Today, so I can tell you that this is happening anecdotally in my own house. I have Gen Z teenagers, Gen Z early 20 kids, and they're all on these health podcasts. That's who they go to for health advice. They don't go to the doctors, because I just went to see a doctor not too long ago and he told me to eat less meat. Like, what?
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but maybe it's because you were eating too much meat. I think they're supposed to. I saw one account saying, oh, they saw this and got mad in response to their Buttigieg segments.
Like, it's all well and good for me to keep going on Fox News, and I will, although they don't seem to be inviting me as much lately. But, you know, a lot of...
He just called you a pussy.
I like that.
Talk your shit. Talk your shit, Pete.
Okay. And then we remind ourselves, why maybe have they stopped inviting Pete onto their airwaves? Why are they bringing forward these sort of brain mushy criticisms like, he's gay, which is essentially the reference to makeup tutorials, and the other stuff that you heard there? It's because they know the opposite is true, that he is an effective surrogate for the Democratic Party.
Affect them the most, whether we're talking about choice and her stance on defending a woman's right to choose versus Donald Trump, who eliminated a right to choose in this country.
Well, he sent it back to the states, to be fair.
Let's be very clear. He is proud of the fact that he demolished the national right to choose in this country, period.
But there are states that are figuring this out. I mean, there are some that are, it's nearly impossible, a 6-week ban or less. But there are states in this country that allow no restrictions up until the due date of a child.
There was a national right to choose in this country, law of the land, for 50 years, which the vast majority of Americans believed was the right thing to do. But Donald Trump made a promise when he was a candidate, one of the few promises he actually kept, by the way. He didn't keep his promise of 6% economic growth. He didn't keep his promise to drain the swamp.
He did have a pandemic to deal with.
But even before the pandemic, America went into a manufacturing recession, which really hurt places like where I come from in the industrial Midwest. But anyway, my point is, he broke his promise for that kind of economic growth. He broke his promise to pass an infrastructure bill, right? He said he would do that. He failed to do it. The Biden-Harris administration got it done. He even broke his promise to that January 6th mob when he said, I will be at your side when you march down to the Capitol. But he actually did keep 2 promises. He kept his promise to destroy the right to choose in this country, and he kept his promise on tax cuts for the rich. And if you want to know what a second Trump term would be like, I would start by looking at those rare promises that he actually managed to keep.
He did.
Yeah, that's why they're trying to get ahead of this and sort of shoot it down before it begins, before there's any rise or re-rise of Pete Buttigieg, because, often you can, this isn't an absolute rule, but there is some insight to be gained about the quality of someone by the quality of the criticism of them, and the criticism being, well, you might as well do makeup tutorial. Maybe gives you a little bit of insight that they can't think of a better criticism than that. Or, he's trying not to be beta. That's why he grew a beard, because he was beta before. It's kind of sad and embarrassing. You saw him there on hostile territory, still an effective messenger. This isn't the first time. During his first presidential run, you had a similar Pete Buttigieg showing up for a Fox News town hall, and on one of those issues that Fox hosts really feel like they can corner Democratic candidates on, Pete Buttigieg beautifully articulated his stance.
I think the dialogue has got so caught up on where you draw the line that we've gotten away from the fundamental question of who gets to draw the line. And I trust women to draw the line when it's their own life.
So just to be clear, you're saying that you would be okay with a woman well into the 3rd trimester deciding to abort her pregnancy?
Look, these hypotheticals are usually set up in order to provoke a strong emotional...
In fairness, sir, it's not hypothetical. There's 6,000 women a year who get abortions in the 3rd
That's right, representing less than 1% of cases.
I know, but 6,000 pregnancies.
Let's take ourselves in... So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a woman in that situation. If it's that late in your pregnancy, that means almost by definition, you've been expecting to carry it to term. We're talking about women who have perhaps chosen a name, women who have purchased a crib, families that then get the most devastating medical news of their lifetime, something about the health or the life of the mother that forces them to make an impossible, unthinkable choice. And the bottom line is, as horrible as that choice is, that woman, that family may seek spiritual guidance, they may seek medical guidance, but that decision's not going to be made any better, medically or morally, because the government is dictating how that decision should be made.
And what's almost upsetting in watching that is that so few Democratic politicians are able to that succinctly and effectively make the case on that issue, right? I've over and over on this show made that point, that it's sort of this red herring, a misnomer. And if you look at the circumstances of those late term abortions, you get some insight that should fundamentally change the stance. It's not the caricature that Republicans make it out to be, and instead these medical crises and devastating moments in people's lives. But often I've seen clips of Harris struggling with that one, Newsom struggling with that one. Just they get kind of nervous and strange in the answers. A lot of people, it's not just those two, a bunch of candidates have really struggled with that topic, and there he nails it. Now, why am I bringing this up? I don't even know if he's going to run for president or something else. I don't know if he'd be the best candidate. We're going to have to see who gets into the race. But I see him right now in the appearances that he's making and some of the skills he deploys as being, if nothing else, what should serve as a wake-up call to other people who align more with our values than obviously Trumpism or MAGA, which is to say that you got to kind of throw out the old playbook a little bit and meet people where they are and have both policy and a message that resonates. And clearly the Democratic Party right now is failing that in many ways, and has for some time, like in the election. And I think he serves as an example of, okay, it's possible to resonate with the groups of people that Trump dominated with. In the clip I'm about to show you, it represents an audience that is male dominated and largely went for Trump, Andrew Schulz's audience. And you can do it without conceding on any of the values that we want to stand up for. So that's what I see this as, not just a Pete Buttigieg cheerleading session. But here was another moment from this podcast with Andrew Schulz.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing this right now. Again, the Doge stuff, they make it sound like there's like millions of dead people getting Social Security.
Exactly.
We're just not. That's just not true.
So how many are there dead people? That's because this seemed to me fact.
Well, first of all, like
Biden can get it.
look, I mean, one thing to think about is like, obviously the vast majority of people who die of old age are getting Social Security the day they die, right? Mm-hmm. So like for at least a minute or a week or a month or however long it takes, right? There's that process of updating. But part of it had to do with how the database was built, and you just didn't necessarily like remove everybody from the database. It didn't mean they were getting money, but it meant they were in the database. And so you could twist that into looking like this is what the president did in his speech. Like, it's true there's this database that had all these people from like, 100 years ago. It was not true that they were getting checks, okay?
Wow.
But he said the one part.
That's good.
And your brain fills in the blanks. And now you think, oh shit, there's like millions of people who are 150 years old getting checks. Which is not.
And notice there's the really important stuff we spend a lot of time on. The fact that we need soon, in all the next elections, we need a really strong turnout against the people in power right now and for better values. And that's most important. But how you get there, you got to focus on things that in the moment might seem a little bit kind of squishy and surface level. And that applies here. You should pick up on, and this does matter because we've learned a lot about what happened in the 2024 election. It's very multifaceted, but one little component is that Harris didn't show up on the platforms in front of the people and in a relatable, resonant enough way to win over key groups. So it's not just about having better or the right stances, but being able to bring those to people in a way that just seems honest. And I think that one thing that people do, especially in this podcast, you notice just kind of the way that he was talking. He was doing this phenomenon well, which is just be a person for a second, right? It feels sometimes like a lot of Democratic politicians can't get out of that politician robot mentality. And if you can break out of it, maybe some of them don't have the ability and they might not be the right person for this moment, because a lot of people are really going off of, do I just feel like this is a normal person? And somehow, despite Trump being a wild elitist and lying all the time and having terrible policies, he convinced a lot of people by showing up and talking for 3 hours on these podcasts that, all right, he's kind of just, I think I like him, right? And so Buttigieg, way better than Trump ever could, and with much more honest and at least my principle aligned policy prescriptions, did that very well and has in multiple of these appearances where he's talking about things, he's fact-checking thoughtfully, and he's making a pro-Democratic Party argument, but it doesn't come off like, another script that's been focus script, as I've referenced before. Now, Another person that's being talked about a lot right now, I've said I don't know if this election cycle is sort of where her name's going to come up, but some people are speculating AOC may be in the running, and Fox News is also trying to get ahead of that. And Republican Senator John Kennedy had his thing.
In terms of the Congresswoman, look, I encourage her to run. I hope she does run. I understand. I listened to her speech. I understand her slogan is going to be "Change begins with a mustard seed," which I think is interesting. I guess if Governor Pritzker runs, his slogan will be "You can have a tummy and still be yummy." I don't know. I just think with the Congresswoman, if you scratch the surface, you get more surface. I don't think she has the intellectual firepower to run a campaign or to be president, but I hope she does.
Oh my gosh, I think her slogan's gonna be: "You plant a mustard seed, you get a mustard bottle. If you scratch the surface, you get more surface. You scratch that surface, you get..." My mommy always said, if you eat a rabbit, you get a chicken. That's what my mom always said. And if you eat a chicken, you get a chicken. I don't think AOC has the intellectual firepower like me. The funny thing is, I do think Kennedy has intellectual firepower if you look at his history of education. And then he acts like he doesn't for some reason. I don't know. He plays this character where I'm very folksy, and I have catchphrases like, if you cook broccoli and then you freeze it, then it's not broccoli anymore. And organic broccoli, that's liberal shit. So I'm relatable. You see, even back to this. This has worked for him, even though this is not that whole thing. It's just the character he plays, so that people see him as relatable. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. Back to my point, if you can have people who are actually authentically relatable, think about how powerful that could be. Then this.
Well, let me address first your question about dark woke. I think the Democrats are trying to appear more manly. Just a thought, but they may want to consider first getting rid of their man purses and their organic broccoli.
No, wait. That one was good. No, that one, you got me on that one, John. No, that was actually good. No, actually, that one, I'm usually hard on you, but that one was a
dark woke, light woke, mellow yellow woke. It's still woke, and that's the Democrats' problem. If you believe the polls, Jason, most Americans believe that Republicans aren't perfect, but they think the other side's crazy. They think that Democrats, like Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez.
What? What name did you even try to say there?
That Democrats, like Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez.
The American people think that Congresswoman what did he say? Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez,
like Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, have chosen to become what my son would call utter.
All right, John. So here's what I've heard. Cut to yourself for a second, Jaden. Producer Jaden is having a fit.
They had to put a B-roll so that people knew what he was talking
Yeah, right.
about.
Who? Oh, Congresswoman who? Just, hey, you know what's really great? For the purposes of people like you, John, she made a little acronym for you. You can just say AOC. Okay, it's easier that way. Oh my gosh. So, Here's what I see here. This is actually exciting to me. John annoyance aside, it's actually exciting to me because there is a certain arrogance that you're seeing, overconfidence that you're seeing among MAGA and Republicans because they won the election by a thin popular vote margin, and then they did sweep the swing states. But they got in their head, despite losing by a larger margin 4 years before that, that now this means they can never lose again. And the Democratic Party's dead forever, not understanding how politics has worked forever. And so they're brushing away what is, again, if I had to put money down, I don't think AOC is going to be, I don't even think she would run, but if she did, I don't know if she'd be the nominee. But the point is, what she and Bernie are tapping into in those rallies, ignore at your own expense, Republicans. Because, and I actually saw, I think it was Meghan McCain, maybe, was saying essentially that, ignore this at your own expense, Republicans. Because while those two may not be the name on the ticket, the excitement that they're tapping into, the rage that they're tapping into, and the more honest populism, I guess you could describe it as, and the oligarchy versus us framing as Trump works in favor every day of the oligarchy. John, don't worry about it. Us organic broccoli libs are just going to lose to you forever. Isn't that right? Believe that. That will serve you very well in future elections as people are fed up that none of you had the spine to push back against Trump's disastrous economic, social, etc. policy. Share your thoughts in the comments.